Hi, it's Ann Bach, and we're live from Augustana College. This is WOG.FM Radioactive, and I'm here with another episode of the College Mindset Podcast. And today I'm with Yen Dao. We're going to be discussing something that has been a challenge for a lot of people, including myself, and that is time management. So, first, I'll take it away, Yen Dao, and I will leave it up to you. Say who you are and just what you do at Augie and what your position is and all of that.
Okay, well, thanks, Anne, for inviting me. Again, my name is Yen, and I'm the Director of Student Success Services in the Learning Commons at Augustana College. I've been at Augustana for 5.5 years now, and in my role, I manage the subject tutoring program. And also, I present a lot of workshops on these study skills topics like time management. And I also meet one-on-one with students to discuss time management and other study skills related topics. And so when Anne reached out to me, I thought this would be a great opportunity for us to talk about this. And I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Especially during these times. I mean, we're managing different skills that we haven't been able or haven't thought of managing before. And again, that includes just like prioritizing yourself and how to include that more than ever. So absolutely. So could you, off the top of your head, just give some benefits of what time management can do to our lives?
Yeah, I think time management is one of those topics or ideas that are very easy to understand, but also very easy to overlook and to master. You see people, even very successful people, struggle to manage time. And so the benefits of time management would be to make sure that you get the things you want done in a high quality manner. It is very easy for us to get things done, but are they at the level that we would like it to be? And also, when you don't time manage well, it could lead to a lot of personal issues for you. So, for instance, for some students, it's a matter of not getting that paper done and getting desperate and plagiarize on a paper. Other students may get stressed out and then, completely just check out and just don't even turn the paper in. And of course, there are other types of consequences too, like not getting a grade that you should have gotten, failing in class. So those are all your negative consequences. But of course, your positive would be that you would turn in the best paper that you know you can do. You would feel accomplished. That always helps, if we feel like we got something done on time, it makes us feel good and it makes us more likely to do that again. So it's always that cycle of success that you see when you're more motivated. And of course, when you're not stressed out, you're more likely to be, enjoying other aspects of life. But if you're stressed out, then everything else falls apart too. So those are definitely some considerations when it comes to time management.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think of time management as though it's like this you're like forming your schedule in a way so you know exactly what you need to do at the right times. So kind of going off of what I just said, what would time management look like for you? And I know when I met with you, like first year coming into college, you kind of just gave this layout for me of, hey, you should be scheduling in like when you wake up in the morning. You should be scheduling in, how long you think you get ready in the morning, and then your walk to class and like little things. I just thought, well, I guess I fit that in when I can, but that can actually, the little things can throw us off. So can you kind of describe like what your plan looks like that you recommend for other students?
Right. Students often are very surprised when they have to do this exercise with me. Nobody really thinks about, why should I schedule in sleep, or why should I schedule in eat or exercise? That just seems silly, right? But to be honest with you, the exercise of scheduling in your daily activities is one of the most successful things that I've had students do. Year after year, I have students come back and just ask for, can we do this together? For me, this started when I was a first-year student and taking more classes than I should have, and trying to figure out, well, how do I stretch, this many hours per week and all the things that I want to do with classes, with student organizations, with work, family, friends. So I was trying to figure out how to make it all work. So what started was in my first year of college, I split it up into an Excel sheet of every 15 minutes increment. I would put in time I shower, time I eat, time I study, time I go to classes. And it allowed me to see that even though my schedule is busy, I still have time for all of these things. But sometimes when we think about it and we don't actually visually see it, we often think that we don't have the time. When we actually do have the time, we just need to be more focused in doing the things that we need to do. So for me, the schedule, for it to work for each individual person, it has to be a realistic schedule. So for example, when I was in college, I was very different than I am now. Nowadays, I wake up at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning. I was still dreaming at that point when I was in college. So it would have been unrealistic for me to create a schedule that would start at 5 or 6 in the morning. It would be more realistic to start at 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning. Same goes, I would stay up much later than I do now. That was realistic. But now 10 o'clock rolls around and I'm exhausted. And so I think for me, when students need to think about scheduling, you want to be realistic about your energy level. How much sleep you actually need to feel well. Not just how much sleep you need to function, but actually to feel well. Because when you feel well, you also are able to be more motivated. I know when I don't get enough sleep or if I'm not sleeping well, I'm just groggy all day, I'm tired, and I just can't get myself going. And so the first step I always tell students is to be realistic and then to schedule in the sleep first. Because if you schedule in a good sleep pattern, then you will see that everything else will fall into place. So for example, if you wake up the same time every day and go to bed about the same time every day, you will see that you'll be hungry about the same time every day, because that's just how our body works. If you're hungry about the same time every day, then your energy level would be about the same time every day as well. And so when you're scheduling, whether you're doing this on your own or you're working with me, I help you kind of think through like when would it make sense to schedule your classes, to schedule study times. It wouldn't make sense to schedule study times when you are most sleepy and groggy and low energy, because at that time you'll see that you just can't get anything going and you're wasting that time. I would much rather you hang out with friends, browse social media, texting your buddies, watching TV, doing the things that don't take a lot of brain power at the times when you have the lowest energy. And then picking the times when you are at your peak. If you're a morning person, if you're an afternoon person, if you're a night person, that's when you do the most challenging task. And for some people, it might just be studying in general. For others, it might be reading, research, writing, studying for an exam, reviewing notes. It's different for each person. So I think that's the nice thing about coming in to see me for an individual meeting, because we can actually talk about those things and kind of schedule that in too. So we can even be more specific on how we schedule study times. But with the schedule being realistic, understanding yourself, and realizing that, one schedule does not necessarily work for everybody.
Oh, yeah.
So, when I think I may have shown you what my schedule looks like, and that's not going to be working for you. So part of our conversations, I get to know you and then help you make the best decision, help you think about all the other things that you hadn't even thought about, and then equate that into the schedule.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people tend to compare themselves with other people's schedules a
Right.
lot. I know, like, freshman and sophomore year, I was like, I'm not studying as much as, like, this person. And I'm like, does that mean I'm a bad student? Like, and then I was like, I don't wake up at 6 in the morning and exercise like other people do. Does that mean I'm not as motivated as that other person? Like, I just can't do this. And then you just think about, well, maybe I should incorporate that. And I actually tried doing that, and it didn't work out for me. I am not a morning person when it comes to working out. And I like to frame it as like moving my body. So like I find that taking like 20 minutes midday when I am now like groggy because I work in the morning is when I take the time to like move my body. And it's really helped to see, okay, what works for my schedule and my mentality. And it's kind of like a trial and error. You're going to write something up and it's like a rough draft of a paper and you're like, all right, let's move some things around. So that's kind of like how I view it.
Right, that's definitely a good approach. Sometimes I help a student come up with a schedule and it works perfectly, and other times we need to redo it 2 or 3 times. I think that's like that for a lot of things we do in life. Sometimes it's a trial and error, and sometimes it works perfectly the first time, and other times we may need to just kind of do a little tweaking here and there. But like anything in life, if it doesn't work the first time, we try something different, and eventually we find what works best. But I think for study skills in general, I think students tend to think that if it doesn't work the first time, it must not work, and I'm not going to do it at all.
Yep.
But it is definitely worth finding a schedule that actually would work for the student. Yeah, you mentioning about the working out. I would not have been able to work out at 6 in the morning in college, but that's really the only time I work out now. I have no interest in working out in the evening time. I play a lot of racket sports in the evening time, but
wow.
I would rather do some working out. To me is kind of mindless, and so I want to do that when I don't need a lot of energy. But when you're playing sports and you gotta be, you want to be at your best when you're playing sports. So I like to do that in the evening time, so yeah, definitely my schedule I don't think is realistic for most people, but it works for me, and I don't know if I would be able to do what you do, so so yeah, but I think the key here is being realistic with yourself, finding what actually works for you, and understanding that we could find what is right for you. It's just a matter of giving it a few different tries, and in the long run it will be worth it, because you're going to feel so proud and accomplished when you get things done and you're not stressed out and everything's falling right into place.
Absolutely. And again, how do you think this could help with procrastination? Because I personally have looked at my calendar, and even though I have everything written out, just looking at it can give a feeling of overwhelming sensation, like, oh my gosh, I have all this to do. It's doable, but for some people maybe that may stress them out and then they avoid it. So what strategies or like mentality would you recommend if you do tend to get overwhelmed with writing all the stuff down that you have to do?
So this is kind of a tough situation, right? Because you are more organized and you want to think ahead, but the more you think ahead, it worries you a little bit. So the way that I think about this is that if I schedule my day, it gives me time. I set aside time to do the things that I need to do. But what I tend to tell myself is that I need to take one thing at a time, right? So one of the things that people often associate time management with is multitasking. It's not exactly multitasking, it's just sort of like divvying up your time to make sure you get everything done. So the way I think about it is every morning I have a 15 to 30 minutes of planning time. Just to kind of look ahead of what I need to do. So I have a separate list of things I need to do today. And then, of course, I plan ahead in terms of like the week, the month, that kind of stuff. But what I tell myself is I only have to do 3 to 5 things today, right? And I tell myself if I do these 3 or 5 things today, then I know that with time that I'm going to get all these things done. I try and I write it out, so I tell myself it's only 3 to 5 things. It's not all of these things. So you have to almost have separate lists of things, right? You're not just thinking of, okay, I need to do 20 things by the end of the week, but you're only thinking of, okay, here are these small tasks I need to get done today. And so when we talk about the issue of procrastination, so there's this equation that we talk about when it leads to procrastination. So one of the factors is how long it will be until this thing is due. So right, like we're more likely to push things back if the deadline is far into the future. We're more likely to do it if it is right at this moment because it's due tomorrow and we need to get it done. So that's one part of the procrastination equation. The other part is how impulsive you are as a person. Are you an impulsive person or not? If you're more impulsive, you're likely to push things back and do things that you enjoy most. But the other aspects also is the value of this thing that you're trying to do. Like, how happy would it be if you get an A in this particular assignment? because if you know you're going to do well in it, you're more likely to get going a little more quickly. And then lastly, what what you think is going to be the likely outcome. Like if I think I'm going to fail something, I'm going to dread it for as long as possible and not do it. So those are like the 4 factors that go into procrastination. So when you think about that, like you thinking about, okay, I have all these things that I have to do. So what we need to do is we need to think about, okay, well, what can I change in order to make it more appealing to me, right? So one of the things is to break it into smaller groups of activities. So don't think of it as I need to get all of this done, but just these many things done today. The other thing you can do is try to do things that are easiest, the easiest assignment, and do that first, because that way then you can kind of get your energy level up.
Yeah, you're on a roll.
Right, exactly. It's the same thing when it comes to taking exams. You always answer the easy questions first. Don't ever get stuck on the tough
Oh
questions.
yeah, I always go back.
Yeah, right? Because if you get stuck, then it ruins your mood, and then all of a sudden you don't work on any of the easy stuff that you could have gotten those easy points. So same thing with tasks. Like I always say, do the easy stuff first, because it doesn't require a lot of energy. And then once you get on the roll, like you said, then those more difficult tasks will feel a little bit more manageable to you at that point. But those would be some of the things I would say. But the other things that I always tell people too is you have to realize that learning is a daily kind of thing. It's not something where you cram it all in one sitting and expect for a positive result. You do a little bit each day. And so while you may feel like I have this weight of the world on me, you do a little each day, and then it will just chip away at the grand, prize, which is your college education.
Yeah.
But I would do a little bit each day, and I also would give myself mini rewards, right? If you reward yourself a little bit each day, it's sort of like a little motivation to kind of push you up a little bit.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, getting things done is a reward on itself, but sometimes that's not enough. For me, as I mentioned, I like sports. I like racket sports, and I will absolutely not go until I do certain things, right? So I might say to myself, if I am productive at work today, I will allow myself to go play 2 hours of tennis.
Yep.
If I clean up, so today I'm cleaning my house. So if I clean my house, I'm going to allow myself, 1 hour of TV time. I would do that normally anyway, but to use it as a motivation is a good way to think about, okay, this is all worth doing.
Yeah, and I don't think we give ourselves enough recognition of the things we do accomplish, because I know that if I don't fully complete something, like let's say, I don't break my goals into like little pieces, like you said, and I don't get all of it done, or I don't get all of it done that I had planned on it, it was almost like I see it as a failure. Like I was not able to complete that, and I have to move on to something else, when really we didn't, we did do it. Like we could have just not done it all together. Like just the fact that we started it and did as much as we could was kind of like an accomplishment in itself.
Right. This all or nothing mentality is really debilitating. I feel like it depends on the activity itself. Some activities are really complicated and do require time. And so, for me, nowadays, I was much better in college, but nowadays I have a really hard time reading and writing as is. And so for me, if I can focus for 30 minutes a day, reading or writing, I am so excited. But, when I was in college, I could go for hours and be able to, for the most part, retain what I'm learning. But I think we need to kind of be realistic with ourselves. But as long as we're making progress, I think that's all that matters. As long as we're improving, I think that matters. If you don't get it right the first time, that's okay. I think that's learning. Learning is a continuous process. I always remind students, remember when you learned how to ride a bike? And did your family showed you how to ride a bike? Okay. How old were you at that time?
Oh gosh, 5 or 6.
Okay,
it was like kindergarten.
Right time. Think about that. Did your family put you on a bike? You just went right away and didn't fall, and then all of a sudden you know how to ride?
Oh no, I had pillows strapped to me around. They duct taped pillows, and they're like, yep, she's probably gonna fall, so here's a helmet, and we had like knee pads and everything, and I fell.
Yeah, you fell and it hurt, but then you got back up and you kept trying, and it may have taken one time, or it might have taken you 10 times to do it. And it's the same thing. I have a 10-year-old. When I first had him do it, he fell and he cried and he said he wouldn't want to do it anymore. And then I was like, too bad, you're going to keep trying. And then the next time he got on it, he did just fine. You know, at a young age, we know that you don't always get things the very first time you do it. But then you don't give up. And so why do we feel that we have to do it that way here in college? And so my thing is, you know, it's okay if the schedule doesn't work out the first time. It's okay if you didn't get everything you thought you would do. The point is to learn from it and keep on going.
Yeah, I think we set expectations for ourselves because other people have done it. Let's say, you know, for example, I know people are getting ready for like med school, you know, and that's really stressful. I'm not a pre-med student, but my heart goes out to people that are. And they're studying like 9 hours, and, you know, maybe they don't, you know, let's say that they have that fear that they won't get into medical school. And I kind of think like, you know, what we have this expectation that, you know, at this age, at this time in our lives, we should be able to do something. And it's really not the case. And when you take that pressure off, like, you know, what if I didn't get into the school I wanted right away? What if this didn't happen? Is this going to be the end of the world, or is this just a sign that, you know, I just need to keep chipping away at this because it's not my time? So, like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, you know, nothing is guaranteed in life. There are some things that we are more certain than others about.
Yeah.
But I will say that, you know, you do the best you can to put yourself in the best position to get accepted to a medical school, to get a job when you graduate, to start a business when you are done with college, or maybe even you're in college. But nothing is guaranteed in life. And so to say that it has to happen this way, in this particular order, at this particular time, is putting a lot of pressure on you on things that you cannot control. I think if you change the mindset and said to yourself, okay, here are the steps 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that I can take to best position myself to, you know, getting to graduate school, getting to medical school, to get that job, then a lot of the times it does work out the way that you thought it would. But that's the thing, is your approach has to be what steps you need to take to get there, and less on the final destination. Because I feel like we set ourselves up for failure when we say it has to happen this way.
I've done that.
Right. I know I did this when I was kind of in college too, where I thought I was going to get like a job, you know, 6 months before I graduated, because everybody else was starting to get jobs when they were graduating. The job didn't come until 2 weeks before the school year ended. And I tell you, 6 months of just anxiety. I was just doubting myself and all those things. But had I said myself, like, I did everything I could, you know, I took all the steps, it will come, it would have been a much more enjoyable experience. Definitely less stressful, but everything works out in the end. It just may work out in a different way than you expected. But if you expected it to be a certain way, then you're likely going to get disappointed. It reminds me of, you know, when I go into a movie and expect it to be a certain way, and then it just falls short of my expectation. But if I go in without any expectations, with open mind, then oftentimes I'm pleasantly surprised by how good the movie is. And so I think that's kind of how life is too, is you can do everything you should do and then hope for the best. And sometimes it does work out that way.
Yeah, and I love that analogy because I also heard this too. I was listening to another podcast, and they kind of described life as an open book. Like, you know, there is no right or wrong path.
Right.
Like, you create the right or wrong path in your own mind. Like, there is no right or wrong decision you will ever make, because, like, then your story isn't very interesting, right? Like,
Right.
if nothing bad happens, there's it's always going to be balanced in our lives. There's always going to be good things. There's always going to be bad things, or things aren't going to be, or take a wrong turn. It wouldn't be exciting. And we don't view it that way when it's happening to us. We're like, the world's going to end.
Yeah,
But
it's
yeah.
hard to stay positive when you're going through this uncertainty. I think uncertainty is scary for a lot of people. But yeah, I definitely think that if you go in with an open mind, you're flexible and adaptable. I think those are all good skills to have. And it's tough to acquire those skills if that's not a strength that you have. But I mean, I think with life experiences, people do learn to be more adaptable. So yeah, so to me, I think my suggestion would be is to do the best you can, look into what you need to do to put yourself in the best position to acquire whatever goal that you have for yourself. But understand that there are things that you can control and there are things that you cannot control.
Yes.
So I wouldn't be hard on myself over something I did everything I could and the result wasn't what I expected. But there are things you control, which is your level of optimism, your outlook in life, your expectations of how something should turn out. But if you expect that you did the best you could, then you did the best you could, then you haven't failed yourself.
Yeah.
You did everything you could.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, just kind of going off of that, that reminds me of, like, we create the schedule for ourselves, or expectations, but something might happen in the middle of it. I know I was talking to you before about, like, what if this is, I know is an extreme, but what if someone dies in the family, or like the huge things that we don't think about, and we have a plan, like, this is exactly what it's gonna fall into place. Or it could be something where, like, hey, my friend needed to talk to me today, and something was going on and I wanted to sit down and talk to her, but that meant I couldn't do this other thing I'd put in my schedule. So again, we kind of talked about this, but what would be your advice on how to mentally, like, go about that, knowing that things are going to pop up, and, like, is it okay, is it not okay, how do I work around that to get that thing done that I didn't do?
Yeah, it's creating the schedule allows us to figure out when it's best to do certain things, and it allows us to work ahead. If you don't have a schedule and you do it whenever you feel like, it may be very easy for you to fall behind. So yes, things happen all the time. Bad things tend to happen at the worst time possible. To give an example, like, if you're running late to a meeting, all of a sudden every light is red. Have you experienced that before?
Oh, 100%.
Oh, yeah, it happens to me all the time. And I'm not late to meetings often, but when I am late, I'm always running into red lights.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I think this kind of shows that things do happen, and things do happen in the worst possible moment. So for me, if you stick to a schedule for the most part, but then something bad happens, like a friend really needs you, if there's a death in the family, if you're experiencing something physically, like maybe COVID, or for some students it might be a mental emotional health situation, I would say that if you were good at planning ahead, that when things like that do happen, it's manageable, it's okay, you can handle those things and work out a plan to make sure that you are back on track. The problem is, if you don't ever have a schedule and don't really have a plan, then when you run into something difficult in life, that will just make it even harder to dig out of that hole. So it gives you another reason why you should plan ahead. And part of the planning is to realize that you always expect the worst that could happen. So for me, when I talk about procrastination, how to deal with procrastination, is the first thing is you have to understand what you're going up against. Like, let's say if you had a research paper you have to do. First, you have to know all the components that's required of the assignment. And then second, you would have to guess how long it would take for you to get this thing done. Okay, so a research paper, depending on the page limit, I might be sitting here thinking, okay, it is due 2 weeks from now, it will probably take me at least 30 to 60 minutes per day to get it done. So I would like actually estimate how long it takes to get some done. And then the third step, which is relevant to what we're talking about, is to anticipate it will take you much longer than that, because maybe the computer internet isn't working. Maybe because you try to print it out and the copier is out of ink or paper. Some of these other personal things that happen that derail you from getting your work done, right? So the more time you give yourself to plan for these things, the more likely you're going to be able to get it done, even if these things were to occur. Now, if things occur, I would first talk to the instructor and let the instructor know that this has happened. In a lot of these cases, these are reasons where you could get an excuse from. But I think for me too is it really depends on how near a deadline is. Like, let's say if you have a paper tomorrow and you have to talk to a friend, perhaps it's one of those things to say, okay, I'm going to allow myself to spend this amount of time with my friend, and then I need to go back and be able to get this done, right? Or maybe it might be a combination of, I need to contact my professor and say, I have an emergency situation. Would it be okay with you if I'm late by this many minutes or so?
Yeah, and that gives more control too. Like, you feel like you have no control over the situation because you didn't expect it.
Right.
But things happen, and I think that's so important to talk about. Like, things will happen.
and the thing is, if you tell professors ahead of time that you need more time, I feel like the majority of professors would be able to work out something with you. I mean, it varies depending on the instructor, right? But when you give professors advance notice of you going to be late, they're a lot more understanding than if after the fact you say, actually this thing happened.
Yeah,
and then,
sorry.
Of course that would be a more difficult situation. But I think if you would work out a deal of some sort, you're honest, you're respectful in your the way you approach it. I think most professors will say, okay, I understand your situation. Can you make it by this time? So, I mean, I feel like that's probably what the majority of professors will say.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, some professors may say, no, this is a hard deadline, but I think it doesn't hurt to ask, right?
Oh, yeah.
And it doesn't hurt to show that you do care before a deadline has passed.
Yep, I've had that happen before. Like 2 weeks ago, I was having, it was so rough. I had like an exam, a paper, and this short assignment I had completely forgotten about because I just finished my exam. And then I came back, I finally got food because I didn't eat that day. So I got food and I came back, and then I realized, and then I looked at my Moodle, I was like, I feel like I'm missing something. And I looked, the deadline was 5 and it was 5:30, and I just freaked out because I didn't expect. I was like, I always get these things turned in, I always do this, and then how could I forget? And then I was just kind of shaming myself and blaming myself because I've had this routine for 5 weeks now, and then something happened and I felt like I didn't have control, and then I kind of had to sit there and be like, okay, I have more control than I think I do. I can email him, explain I had an exam. I apologize. I'm still going to turn it in whether I grade it or not, or whether he grades it or not, and just explain the situation because what's the worst that could happen?
Yeah. Right, and the manner in which you approach the situation makes a huge difference. How your pattern of how you behave in the class makes a difference.
Oh, yeah.
If you're someone who is late on assignments all the time, I would guess that would be one of those that, no, I can't give you another exception. But yeah, for me, life happens, and I think with the pandemic right now, more and more professors are understanding of sort of the challenges of what students are facing. I know for me, with all the technologies we've been having today, I've been having technology issues in class almost every day, it seems. And so I think there's a lot of empathy that professors have for students right now. So I'm not suggesting that we should abuse that or take advantage of it. But I think that there is a time when we can kind of open up, be the person who brings it up, right? Not that, if you're falling behind and your professor has to reach out to you, that you take ownership of that and be able to start that conversation. But yeah, for me, if your schedule is, if you have to take a break from your schedule to deal with this thing, my guess is if you've been following the schedule, you're already working ahead of schedule.
Mm-hmm.
And so taking a break to take self-care or for other reasons is not going to be detrimental in the long run.
Yes.
It will be detrimental if you were already falling behind and you're just going to put yourself in a worse situation.
There needs to be a balance, and I think people forget that. They're like, oh, I need self-care, but it can't drown out the list that we haven't done.
Yeah,
So,
and you know that's the other thing about the schedule too is when I work with students, I talk about putting in breaks in between.
Yes.
I
yes.
oftentimes think that students push themselves over the limit, and then that's what leads to a lot of these breakdowns. And so for me, I always tell people like, for me, I need 30 minutes of research, and that's it. If I go longer than 30 minutes, I get drained, and then I can't do anything else. But if I did 30 minutes of research, 30 minutes of reading, 30 minutes of writing, it's manageable amount of time. And then I give myself a break to do something else that's a little bit more enjoyable.
Yes.
And then that's just a little bit of a boost to get myself back into, okay, I'm ready to get back to work. But if you don't ever give yourself breaks, you're going to find yourself run down and you're tired. And you don't wanna do anything.
I was feeling that way this week, and I was like, I am not giving myself enough break. And we think like breaks have to be like, oh, well, I did half an hour of writing, then I'll do an hour or half an hour break. Breaks can even be even like 5 minutes,
Right.
like 10 minutes. And one thing this doesn't work for everyone, but I fully believe in like meditation. And so doing like 5 or 10 minutes, like, or even a minute, it could just be a minute of just like not thinking of anything and just like, focusing on your breath, focusing on things around you, not getting a drink of water. Like that's a break, and people don't realize like, that is also considered self-care, just being like, all right, I'm just going to take a few minutes to like detach myself from the list of things I have to do.
Right, and some of your listeners are probably not a fan of meditation, and I totally empathize with you guys, and I will be the first to say I was not a fan of meditation until I started at Augustana.
Oh, really?
I have a Augustana colleague. His name is Dr. Jake Romanillo. He works in the Reading Writing Center, and we talked about meditation and mindfulness. And he told me some really basic things to do meditation, like what you just said, just being more aware and focused on the things you're doing. So, for example, earlier I mentioned about, when you drive a car and you run into lights and constantly. Well, what I've noticed over the years is I would get from point A to point B, and I don't even know what happened. I just kind of got in the car, and then I got to where I needed to be.
Yep.
I don't remember seeing cars. I don't remember seeing streets. And so it really, mindfulness, meditation would be to slow down and actually be more aware of these simple tasks. So he said, you can do something as simple as brushing your teeth.
Yeah.
Or, chewing on something.
Laying down in bed, that's one thing I do.
Right, exactly. You can look at the things in your room and just being more focused and aware, and it drowns out off the other negative voices that you have that's sort of like bothering you. So, yeah, there are very simple ways to deal with it, and there are more, fun, what people see as fun. Like, I like to color. I didn't like to color when I was younger, but to me, coloring is a really good way for me to stay focused on something and not stress out over what I need to do. I know some students like to knit or crochet. I think those are great. So yeah, there's definitely just very basic things that you can do to take a break. Texting a friend, calling somebody to say hi real quick.
Oh yeah, that's so important. Yeah.
Yeah, nowadays with a pandemic, we can't be around people as much as we used to. And so whatever way you can find to stay connected socially is a good way to take a break too. But yeah, as you said, if you do a 30-minute study session, take a few minute break. If you do a longer study session, then take a little bit longer break.
Yeah.
So the break has to be proportional with your the amount of studying you do. But yeah, I totally see students who study for 3 straight hours. Well, your brain can't function and be at its optimum for
Yes.
that straight amount of time. You need to give it a break.
Mm-hmm.
Very much like when we watch a movie that's 3 hours long, it starts to get a little bit tiring.
Mm-hmm.
But we want movies that are shorter, that are more action packed, that has
Yeah.
more storyline, because that's what our brain needs. We need breaks. We don't have a long attention span like it used to be when everybody remember lines
Mm-hmm.
for a play or something like that. Nowadays, we're used to commercial breaks. We're used to taking
Yeah,
breaks.
you're right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
I know, like, when I practice or when I'm doing homework, I cannot concentrate after half an hour, and I don't even care if, like, yeah, maybe you do have an exam tomorrow, but you're going to focus more and your mind's going to be clear if you take the small breaks, like they're necessary, instead of, oh, well, I didn't do anything, who cares, like, what you didn't do? Like, you got to focus on the now. Like, you have to also treat yourself with some kindness and get a drink of water and take a break, because then your study session is going to, like, be more successful.
Yeah, and you've been here for a few years now, so you've seen the change in
Oh,
sort
yeah.
of we went from trimester to semester, and
Oh,
now
yeah.
we're in the pandemic, right? So you've kind of basically seen it all. But I'm curious for you, because this is what I have noticed, and I'm curious to see if you have experienced this. But I feel like by the time I get to 4 o'clock, I am drained.
Oh, yeah.
And, and I remember when I first started at Augustana, I had way longer hours, but I don't remember feeling this physically and emotionally drained.
Mm-hmm.
And my guess is it's because of the pandemic and the adjustments we've all had to make. And just like the daily times that we spend looking at a screen and communicating through Google Meet and all those things
Yeah.
that we used to not deal with. So personally, I feel like I'm drained and I'm not working more hours than I used to. If anything, I'm more efficient with the hours that I work now, but I feel a lot more tired than I used to be. And I'm curious to see if you feel that way too or not.
Yeah, I feel that way too, and I've been talking to other people about it. And one thing is, we've noticed, like, in reality, we have less breaks because we're squishing all our time together. So the Mondays we would have had off, like, that we've had off all these years, we haven't had off. There are no longer periods of breaks. Like, it's just kind of been doing the same thing over and over and over again. And then secondly, social media has, I think, blown up since the pandemic until now, and so we don't, like, subconsciously we don't realize that effect that it has on us. And I think it's more draining than ever, dealing with relatives, dealing with people with different opinions, seeing things on social media and getting actually, like, upset about it. And those can just seem like passive things, but I think that can actually catch up with us. Like, all these things we think about. Even I heard someone was like, I could not see another post of someone baking something. I'm so tired of it. It was just so funny thinking about it, because you don't even think about that. But it's so funny. It's kind of like, we don't take enough time, like, just detaching from that. I'm not saying to not completely look at social media ever again, but, I think we don't realize how much we're looking at a screen, not only on social media, but we're constantly looking at our Gmail. We're constantly looking at, I need to respond to people who are quarantining. I'm sure, like, professors are doing that. Like, I not only have to see if all my technology is working, I got to answer Gmail. I got to make sure, if they submit tests online and the people who didn't. Oh, it's just crazy. Like, all that, you have to be hyper focused on everything around you that's not physically there. You're looking at, like, a computer screen. And so I think all that, our minds are having to focus on so many things at once that itself is draining.
Yeah, I totally agree with the social media stuff. I just had this conversation with somebody recently about how emotionally draining it is to see the fighting and the negativity. I am guilty of posting food pictures, but I totally get that too, because what gets to me is, like, baby pictures, like, just constant baby pictures. Although they're very cute, but I get why baking food or cooking food would be a thing. So what I've been doing, and I've been suggesting to people, is whatever is draining you, just unfollow it. In about 3 or 4 weeks, the election will be over, and so you're going to see a dramatic decrease in political news on our news feed. But I always tell people, like, you don't have to unfriend anybody. You don't have to engage in a difficult conversation online.
Yeah.
Funny we mentioned this because we have an event this Saturday. We're having a political debate. And
okay.
we're going to have college Republicans, college Democrats, and some independents debate on political issues.
Okay.
And our focus is to show that it's possible to have a debate and do it in a civil manner.
That's amazing.
But I always tell people, like, there are ways to show that you care about what's going on around the world without engaging in this negative mindset. Because as you know, we're more likely to get along if we actually talk in person than we're trying to communicate our ideas through online. Anything in writing, sometimes it comes off a different way that you didn't intend, and then it creates more of this negative interaction. And you don't want to lose family and friends over differences in opinion. And to be honest with you, differences in political opinion have existed from the start of time. It's
yes, I think people
new.
Forget about that. Yeah.
Right, it's nothing new. And there was a saying that used to go, you don't talk about religion or politics with people. I think you can if you know how to do it without it being a bad thing. But I think it's so difficult to do that on social media.
Yes.
Because it's just these quick reactions that people have. So I've been telling people, like, you want to schedule in times when you unplug from social media.
Absolutely.
When you unplug from just screen time in general. Because it's the screen time that makes you more tired.
Yeah, and just being aware and noticing, like, am I picking up my phone every 5 minutes? Or, if I, like, start an assignment, do I automatically reach for my phone? Like, and I've tried to been more aware of that and just putting on do not disturb or completely turning it off and just being like, this is going to be hard for me to do, but I need to do it. Like, I will turn on my phone later. I will answer these messages later. It's really important to do that because we don't realize it's like time flies by because social media just takes up our attention.
Oh yeah, it's very easy to, I'm just gonna look for a minute and then all of a sudden it's 30 minutes that's passed. So that's good to kind of put it away and give yourself time to unplug. But yeah, for me, I always suggest to people that it's good to, if any time possible, that to reduce the screen time. So there are things that we have to look at the computer for, like researching, right? Like attending a virtual class. There are certain things you have to do online, but there are certain things you don't necessarily have to do online, such as possibly printing out your syllabus so you don't have to go on the computer look at a syllabus.
Yes.
If there's a PowerPoint, print it out. If there are readings online, print it out. To me, it's so much easier to read from a hard copy
absolutely.
than to look from a screen.
Yeah, and again, I have a French exam tomorrow, and I just I was just trying to print it off because it was so hard for me to actually read and memorize something on a computer screen, and that just fascinates me. That like actually like highlighting and writing notes to something helps me remember something so much more.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of research that supports that.
Yeah.
That the act of writing things is much more effective than typing, right? So even note taking, it's more effective to write your notes out than to actually type it out.
Yeah.
But yeah, and if you don't know how to print out to save paper, I can show you. But when it comes to PowerPoint, you can print out 4 to 6 slides per page, front and back, and you'd be going from 30 pages to maybe 4 to 5 pages.
Yeah.
So if you're concerned about wasting trees or concerned about running up too many of your prints, there are so many easy ways to do it. But yeah, those are the things I feel you can kind of reduce screen time by just making a hard copy. If possible, attend in-person classes. Some students, I think, feel that because there's a virtual option, they're going to log in virtually instead. I teach a class, and some of my students do that, and I rather that you go than not go, right? So if your only method of going is to log in virtually, that's okay with me. But I think sometimes you would get so much more by being in person. If you're feeling well, to attend in person, do the best you can to be safe.
Yeah.
But if you're just logging into virtually because it's more convenient than walking across campus,
Yes.
then you create more problems for you because you are logging in virtually and you're not fully prepared and engaged in it.
Yeah.
So there's definitely many different ways to cope. But I think overall we need to think about, okay, what works best for us, and again, not to try to be somebody else, but
Yes.
to actually do the best we can to cope with this changing time that we have.
Yeah, fully being engaged in the moment is so important. And, that's also one thing that is lacked when you're looking at a computer screen, because most of the time I know I've been brought up to look at a computer screen or a phone for pure entertainment. And when you constantly have notifications going, your mind's still going somewhere else.
Right.
And so you're not fully engaged when you're looking at a screen. So, yeah. All right, well, we only have like a minute left, but I just want everyone to know like where they can find you, and like and when you said there was like a political debate going on Saturday, and
Yes.
just briefly give some information about that.
Yeah, so I'm located in the Gerber Center. So I am sandwiched in between the Office of Student Life and the Reading Writing Center. So just right where you eat and hang out. So my work hours are Monday through Friday, 8 to 4. But because the college is telling us that we need to not meet with students in person, I'm doing the meetings all virtually. And so, if you shoot me an email, I can let you know sort of how to schedule an appointment with me. In terms of the debate that we have, it is this Saturday. So the theme is what is truth, because it goes with the symposium day theme. So it's from 5:30 to 6:30, and we do have a Google Meet link for that.
Awesome.
And so it is in the event calendar, and it would be included in the student bulletin and the announcement that the college sends out. But yeah, we do something similar to this every semester when we talk about the importance of civil discourse. But for us this year, it being an election year, and with how disastrous the last presidential debate was, it is extremely important I think for everyone to see that no matter what your political beliefs are, we can talk about it in a respectful and civil manner.
I think that is so important. Yeah, I think that would be extremely beneficial. So I'll send more information about that, and whoever is listening right now, please join in and look at the Augustana calendar events. So yeah, well, thank you so much for just being here. So this was WOG.FM Radioactive, and I will see you next Thursday.
All right, thank you, Anne.